Hello and welcome to the Profit Growth Show. I'm your host, Lindsay Gill, and we'll provide you with expert guidance and growth strategies that you can implement right now to easily grow your business and multiply your profits. The key is to watch, learn, and take action right away. We have a very special episode today as we welcome Bob Burg. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lindsay. Great to be with you.
Perfect. So I just have a quick intro for Bob. Bob Burg is a sought-after speaker at company leadership and sales conferences, sharing the platform with everyone from today's business leaders and broadcast personalities to even a former U.S. president. Bob is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, influence, with total book sales of well over 1 million copies. His book, The Go-Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, itself has sold over 925,000 copies and it's been translated into 28 different languages. Bob is an advocate, supporter, defender of the free enterprise system, believing that the amount of money one make is directly proportional to how many people they serve. So I reached out to Bob because I've read his book, this one in particular, multiple times, and I'm an advocate of his message. So at its core, the Go-Giver way is simply when you give exceptional value and that's how you pretty much enjoy extraordinary results. So I wanted to ask Bob a very specific question. Was there one piece of advice you received before you even knew anything about the Go-Giver and how it entailed, and what type of how has this made a difference for you from, when you didn't know about the concept to you spreading the message about it?
Well, many years ago, when I got started in sales, I learned how to. I came into sales without knowing anything about it, and I read books and I learned, and really, I did pretty well. Okay, and in a couple of years, for a couple of years, my sales career was going okay, but never really, hit the kind of potential that it could have. And I remember I was selling for a company, and it was a high-end product. And I remember I came back to the office after a non-selling appointment. Now, it was not supposed to be a non-selling appointment. It was supposed to be a selling appointment, but I didn't do the right things in the right way. And I remember I must have looked disgusted at myself or whatever, because one of the older guys there, and he wasn't in the sales department. I think he was in the engineering department or something. So it wasn't as though, he was a sales authority, but he was one of these guys who didn't say much, but whenever he did say something, it was always profound. So when he asked me, Burg, can I give you some advice? I said, absolutely, please do. And what he said would have a major impact. He said, Burg, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It's not the target itself. Your target is serving others. And that is when I really came to the realization that great salesmanship was not about the salesperson. Okay, great salesmanship or salespersonship is about the other person. It's about the prospective customer or client. It's about that person who you want to serve. And I think that's the biggest thing that took my career and really accelerated it when I understood that, because now I was approaching it from a totally different point of view. To this day, Lindsay, when I speak at a sales conference, I'll often begin by saying, how many of you agree with the following statement? Nobody is going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. And we all laugh because buying because we have the quota. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money. And they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you only because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And you know what? That's the only reason anyone should buy from you or from me or from anybody else. But the great thing about that is it means that salesperson who can move from a focus on themselves, okay, to a focus on others, that person is really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Well said. I love that. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. There's also in the book where you give 5 laws. So a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs and they're always looking for ways to attract more customers, be that better salesperson. And obviously at the end of it, the reward is the profitability. So can you just briefly describe the 5 laws in your book, if you had to sum it up?
Absolutely. And they all come off a premise, okay? And the basic premise is simply that shifting your focus, this is key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Understanding that doing that is not only a nice way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. So with that in mind, we've got 5 laws, the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. And very briefly, the law of value is really all about focusing so much on the experience that you provide another human being, and not just from when you're in front of them in a sales presentation, but starting from the moment you meet them, whether it's an inbound or outbound type of connection, whether it's you're meeting them in person or some other way, from the moment that you meet that person through the creating the relationship, the follow up and follow through, eventually the presentation and the referrals and every aspect. To the degree that your entire focus is on providing value to that person, that's the degree you're going to create the environment where not only are you the one to have the sale, but you're going to take price out of the issue and you're going to take the competition out of the issue. So that's really what the law of value is all about. The law of compensation says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So what that's really saying is the law of value represents your potential income, but the law of compensation is how many lives you impact with that value. And that really is the money right there that you're going to earn. Law number 3, the law of influence, says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now, when we say this, we don't mean you should be anybody's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial. That's not what we mean by placing the other person's interest first. But it's like we said earlier, right? It's understanding that person, that the golden rule of business is simply that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by moving from that I focus to that other focus. Really, genuinely, really authentically making your win all about the other person's win. And when you do that, you establish that reputation as that person who is the go-to person, that trusted person, that person who really develops what we call an army of personal walking ambassadors.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Law number 4, the law of authenticity, simply says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself, which really says that all the skills, the technical skills, people skills, sales skills, as important as they are, and they're very, very important, of course, but they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. So it's very important to always act congruently with your values. And law number 5 is the law of receptivity, which says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And that means really nothing more than understanding that while you breathe out, you also have to breathe in.
Yes.
You can't do one or the other, right?
Yeah.
Out, which is giving, breathe in, which is receiving. Unfortunately, the world has really created a false narrative for us that you think, wow, anyone who makes a lot of money did it on the backs of others or taking advantage of others or by cheating. It's a big world. There's lots of people out there, but you know what? I guarantee everyone you're working with and everyone I work with, none of us have any special favors from any governing bodies that, right? No, we're having to work for it by pleasing the other person, okay? Because they don't have to buy from us. They buy.
You're absolutely right.
So we always want people to get rid of that, that really unconscious pushing away of receiving, because assuming you're focused on the giving, which absolutely you're focused on the giving, then you've got to allow yourself to receive. See, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work together. But again, the giving comes first. This is why John David Mann, my awesome co-author, why we say that money is an echo of value, right? Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means, again, nothing more. The value comes first. That's going to be the focus. The value comes first. The money you receive is a very natural result of the value you've provided.
Understood. Thank you for giving that summary. And I want to touch back on the first two laws, because I feel like this is where a lot of entrepreneurs will really get stuck: the law of value and the law of compensation. So my specific question into the terms of the law of value is, can you share how a person can add value to others without costing, too much money, or your analogy of just being that doormat, especially in this highly competitive market space? What would be your piece of advice for that?
So I think first we have to understand the difference between price and value for this to make sense. Okay, so we know that price is a dollar figure. It's finite. It's a dollar amount. It is what it is, the price. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, that brings so much worth or value to another human being that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be glad they did, while you make a very healthy profit? I think in Go Give or Sell More, if I recall, we used the example of an accountant who you hire to do your taxes, and he charges you $1,000. That's his price, $1,000. Well, what value, though, did he give you that far exceeded that amount, right? Well, first, he saved you $5,000 in your taxes. He saved you countless hours of doing it yourself. He provided you and your family with the security and the peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. So we see that, again, while price is finite, value can be both concrete in terms of that $5,000. We can get our arms around that pretty easily, but it's also conceptual in terms of peace of mind. In fact, that probably is worth much more to you or to me or to anyone else than even the $5,000 savings. What price can you put on peace of mind? It's just immeasurably valuable. So what he did is he gave us well over $5,000 in value in exchange for $1,000 price. He gave you more in value than he took in payment. So you feel great about it. But he also made a very healthy profit, because it was, in his opinion, it's worth his time to exchange his knowledge, wisdom, and work for $1,000. So that's where we see, first of all, the difference between price and value. But now we have to ask another question, and this is really what you were asking, I think, and that is, in a world in which, technology has pretty much leveled the playing field. Most products and services are pretty much, they work about the same. They work pretty well, and right? How do you distinguish yourself? How do you add that additional value? Because let's face it, if a potential customer or client sees no significant difference between, any two accountants or copying machine salespeople or graphic designers or whomever, right? It's always going to come, if there's no other differences, it's going to come down to who has the lowest price. That's just human nature. And unless your last name is Walmart, right, or Amazon.com, whatever, trying to make low price your unique selling proposition is not a good way to do business. It's not effective. It's not profitable. It's certainly not sustainable. So how do we add that value without it costing us extra and so forth? So first, the short answer is you need to become that additional value, because they're going to do business with you before they're going to do business with your product or with your company. Okay. Now, so how do we become that additional value? That's the question. Fortunately, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of ways to communicate that additional value, but they tend to come down to 5 what we call elements of value. And those 5 elements of value are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. And to the degree that you can communicate one or more, hopefully all 5 of those elements of value at every single touch point, again, from the moment you meet them through the relationship, through there, right? That's the degree and that's how you add that additional value. What kind, the excellence you provide in terms of, yes, your product knowledge and knowledge about, your competitors, even though you're not focused on them, you still need to know about them and their product or service. So because you've got to be able to frame the best way, and only by knowing the competition, that's fine. That doesn't mean you're living on the competitive plane. You're focused on creation, but you still know your competition. But excellence is simply the way you do things. It's really how you make another person feel about themselves, right? Excellence is how you answer your phone. Excellence is how you return your calls or emails in a good period of time, a short period of time. Excellence is, as Tom Peters, who wrote the classic In Search of Excellence, as he says in his newest book, Excellence, not Excellence 2.0, The Excellence Dividend. He says, excellence is the next 5 minutes. It's the next 1 minute. It's everything you do that says to a person, you're important. Okay? So, that's so the excellence is important. Then there's consistency. And what that means is you're not only excellent sometimes, but you're consistent. You're consistently excellent. And consistency is very powerful, because as human beings, we crave consistency. We live in an inconsistent world. Okay, how many people do you know who, and I ask my audiences this, who they're great, they're wonderful, kind, caring. The one time you see them, the next time they're like a totally different person. They're a monster. And you'd almost rather that person just be a jerk all the time, because at least you know what you're getting, right? And so, it's why fast food franchises are typically so successful, because it doesn't matter. You can go into this place in Toronto or Abbotsford or San Diego or Framingham, Massachusetts, and it's always going to be the same food. It's going to look the same, taste the same. The people are going to be dressed the same. The buildings are going to look the same. It's going to smell the same. And people, we crave as human beings consistency. So it's not just a matter of excellence. It's a matter of always showing up that same way every time. Attention, again, this is when we say attention in this case, we're talking about, yes, attention to detail. We're talking about attention to that person as a person, not as a prospect. It's getting to know this person. It's getting to know about that person's family. It's about getting to know about their recreation. It's about getting to know their favorite charity or cause. It's getting to, not so that you can fill in a bunch of blanks, but so that you actually do care about that person and they understand that you do. Because people are human beings. They're not numbers, and they're not just customers. They're human beings. And to the degree that we pay attention to those little things, that's the degree that, they feel good about us. They know us, they like us, they trust us. Then you have empathy, which, the dictionary definition of empathy is the identification with or vicarious experiencing of another person's feelings. But let's face it, we don't always know what they're feeling because we're not them. Mm-hmm. So, what I'm saying, we come from different viewpoints, different upbringings, different ways of seeing a situation, different ways of seeing the world. So I don't think that empathy means you have to understand how they feel. What it means is you communicate that while you may not understand exactly how they feel, you understand they're feeling something, and that this something is distressful to them, and that you're there to help.
Wow, that was a great summary of those 5 elements, because without even reading the book, you pretty much summed it up in in 2 minutes, which is amazing, because I think that's where a lot of people are getting lost is, what type of value can they do? And like you said, it's really like the little things and caring that you're not just that other number. And then, so if we segue to the law of compensation. So before I even read your book, one quote that comes to mind is from Zig Ziglar, and it was, you will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. So when I read that quote from Zig Ziglar, then when I read your book, that law of compensation really resonated with me as well, because like you've said from the very beginning, pretty much your profit is really the determination of how many people you help, but how many people you help very well. That's what's key.
Sure. I mean, Zig was the best, and we lost him too soon. He was a great man, a great human being, and yes, his saying, you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And you think about that, you can go through every word of that, and it's so deep and it's so profound. And really, that's why your focus needs to be on that other person, which again, it has nothing to do with being self-sacrificial, and nothing to do with that. It just means that you understand that in a world in which really the customer is the boss, as they should be, because it's basically up to them. Remember, when we talk about value, right, and we talked about the relative worth or desirability, it's the relative worth or desirability that person places on it. In other words, value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's not what we think is of value. It's not what we think they should think is of value. It's what they think is of value. And sometimes, when we talk about the elements of value, we can be talking about something as simple as sending some information to that person about something that they're interested in. And if we know that they are that Gary collects antiques, and we find an article online about an antique show coming into town, or how to buy and sell antiques, and we send that to him, and a really nice touch is to actually print it out and send it in a handwritten note, right? Or we know that Sarah, who we met at an event, she has a daughter who's a soccer star, 12, 13 years old. So we find an article about soccer camps for kids, or special techniques to be able to kick a soccer ball better or whatever. We print it out and we send it. Those are things that say, wow, this person cares. That's value. It also might be that we know that, Sarah, who sells telephone equipment to upstart businesses, we have we come across someone who talks about renting the entire 3rd floor of this building, and we know those are the best prospects for her, because we asked her when we first met her. So we make that connection. Okay, so all these things we do, they don't take extra money, but they do take thought, and they take caring.
And I think that's what the underlying message is that when you are a go-giver, it's not all about the money. It's, yes, it might take a little more time to write out that card versus just writing that email, because you got to go to the post office or send your assistant to do that. But I say it's the little things that matter. It's the little things that make that first impression lasting.
Harvey Mackay, a great business leader he has a new book coming out actually too, but his big book was called Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. It came out in the 90s, and he owned and still does actually, a very large envelope manufacturing company. And you talk about a commodity-based product, right? And yet they always, they outsold the competition. They did so at high margins and so forth. He a very brilliant man. But one of the things I love that he said was that, they say don't sweat the small stuff. And of course, in many instances, that's appropriate. I mean, the mustard is leaking through the bread. That's not a big deal. That's small stuff. You don't have to sweat that, okay? But when it comes to sales, the salesperson who sweats the small stuff gets the business. Yeah, and it's the difference between writing out a handwritten thank you note and sending a text or an email. Text is good, email's good, but everybody does that. Boom, you want to be that person who sends that handwritten personalized note, which, by the way, that person will keep right on their desk because they don't get it.
Absolutely. So I want to wrap it up with 2 last questions. And the second to last question is, Are there any misconceptions of a go-giver? So what I mean by this is that can a go-giver tell somebody, you know what, no, I actually don't want to do that if they've given so much already? So do you have a scenario or a situation or example story in the past that could illustrate that point?
Well, I mean, I think your question was a great question. Is being a go-giver, is that ever misinterpreted? And the answer is sure, absolutely. Especially if someone hasn't read the book, well, I know they often think, because I've been asked, well, does this mean you're just giving yourself away, or that you don't care about making a profit, or that you are at everybody's beck and call and can't say? And of course, none of those things are true. Being a go-giver simply means you understand the importance of focusing on bringing immense value to others. Okay, so being a go-giver should absolutely never be confused with being taken advantage of, or again, being a martyr. No, absolutely not at all. As far as saying no, well, you've got to be able to say no. You've got to be able to say no a lot more than you say yes, or you're going to be stretched so thin, you're not going to be able to help anyone. And you're certainly not going to be able to serve the people you're supposed to be serving. But the key is how a go-giver, if you will, would say no. And they would say it with respect. And they'd say it in a way that the other person feels and understands that they're truly valued. Just a quick example. Let's say you're asked to serve on a committee. Okay, just as a generic example. Now, there's some people who say, well, no is a complete sentence. I think that sounds better than it actually is, because someone asks you to do something, you're not going to just say no, right? The person's rude. Secondly, you're going to turn that person off from wanting to do anything else with you, and you may not want to close that door. But third, most importantly, it's saying no like that is not congruent with your value system of treating people with kindness and respect. So, I don't think that's a good. Then people will say, well, just tell a little bit of a lie. Like, well, I would, but I don't have time right now. Well, the challenge with that, again, aside from lying, always feels a little yucky, is that you know that you do have the time if you wanted to, because we make the time to do what we value. What it is that we value not doing this thing more than we value doing it, and that's fine. You shouldn't do it, unless there's life and death or something. No, if you don't want to do it, that's up to you. But what happens is when we tell a fib like that, that person's used to hearing that. So when they kind of respond by persuasively sharing with you that time is not gonna be an issue, now you're in trouble. You've either got to admit that you were fibbing, which is going to make you feel bad, and they're not going to respect you, certainly. Or to save face, what do you got to do? You got to accept the request, which you don't want to do. And again, I don't think so. Let's not do either of those two. Instead, let me give you a phrase that if you just memorize this phrase, practice it a few times, get comfortable with it, it's going to just set you free. Okay. Say the person asks you to serve on a committee. You'd certainly say, thank you so much for asking. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am just to be asked. So,
I love it. Love it.
Use a few different words according to your own style, different ways, but that's basically it. It could be, oh, thank you. While it's not something I'd like to do, or while it's not something I choose to do, please know how grateful, or how, whatever your words would be, how grateful or how honored I am to be asked. Now, if that person kind of persists, because people do that sometimes, not out of malice, but just because that's what they do, and you just don't interrupt them, don't become defensive, just wait till they finish and have just a neutral look on your face, or a kind, loving look, whatever. Let them finish, and then just say, they say, oh, but come on, we really need, just let them finish, and then just say, I appreciate it, I'd rather not, but thank you so much for asking.
I love that strategy. It's very polite.
Don't make an excuse. You're thanking them. You're honoring them by letting them know how honored you are to be asked, but you're not giving them an excuse. You're not giving them something to grab onto. And so that will do it.
I think that's a simple strategy that anybody, like you said, can implement right away, immediately.
I get so much feedback on that one. People really,
And you really can't really turn down anybody that says thank you, right? Like, how do you get mad at that? You hardly can.
A person would really have to be kind of past the point of reason to, or be so narcissistic to think that someone can't say no. That and you're not going to be a winning thing anyway. So no, you do it this way, and I'm telling you, I mean, I've had people thank me for the way I've told them no. And this works on the phone, it works in person, it works on email, and I've had that same kind of feedback from others who've utilized this. Again, it's just being honest, but it's being kind. And people say, well, I believe in brutal honesty. You know what? People who say, who take pride in being brutally honest are typically much more interested in being brutal than they are in being honest.
Yes.
Okay? I mean, is there ever a time for it? Of course, but it's very seldom. Typically, we can be honest, and we can be kind, and we can be tactful.
I love it. Thank you. You shared so many golden nuggets throughout this 30-minute interview. And, just to wrap up for all the entrepreneurs listening, and, if they want that big breakthrough, I mean, I understand the go-giver's mindset, but, what's that one last action step you would say, do this right now to get that breakthrough so they could pretty much grow their company and their profits today? What would that be?
In the story, the original one, the Go-Giver book, Pindar, the main mentor, had one condition for Joe for mentorship, and that was to apply each law that day that he heard it, and not question it, not ask, well, why, and not have to be perfect with it either, but to just take action. And I think, it's so important that we don't just listen to ideas and think, oh, that's a good thought, but that we take the ones, again, so long as they're congruent with our value system, that we take the ideas and we apply them. And so, I mean, you're coaching and you're mentoring a lot of people, and you're giving them such wonderful advice. And my advice for them is take your advice, apply the information. Because it's only by applying it that you're going to be able to get the results. You're going to know when to course correct. You're going to know how to take it to that next level, and that's how it begins.
Thank you. I truly appreciate the time you spent today. And like I've said, and I've pretty much gifted and advocated your book in the workshops and the presentations I've done, is if you haven't read the Go-Giver book, Bob's website is www.thegogiver.com. And on his site, there's the first chapter of his international bestseller, as well as a special report you could get called Endless Prospects. And that's what our audience wants, is like you said, endless prospects, but you have to do it the Go-Giver way.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. And I like to think that when people tap into that's, that it makes a difference for them. So thank you for that. That's very kind of you.
Well, just to wrap up, thanks again. Thank you so much for watching another episode of the Profit Growth Show. Now it's time for you to take what you've learned today and take action. We invite you to claim your free profit growth consultation. Visit www.growthadvisorondemand.com to reserve your spot today. We provide on-demand growth advice that delivers 10 times your return on investment or your money back.